This is Jesse. Thanks for joining us tonight. Yes, the final presidential debate of the 2016 season has ended. What's that mean? What's that mean? We've got a debate roundtable, of course. Of course. Now, you know me, I always like to try and pull a surprise. So tonight we've got John Tebow, Susan Swift, Bill, aka Defend Wall Street, Jen from the Jen and Rick Show. It's her first time being with us. Dan from Robinson and Wright. And, of course, Rick from America Off the Rails. So, that is your cast of characters tonight. Of course, I am going to go through and let them introduce themselves. And we are going to start off with John.
Well, Jesse, thank you for having the show tonight. I think it's a historic moment in a sense that we have this debate and, the country is going to figure out who the next president is going to be. So we all watched the debate tonight. As Jesse mentioned, my name is John Tebow. I'm the founder and CEO of a company called iLobby and the author of a #1 international bestseller called How to Change a Law. My take on the debate, since you asked for it, was, and this happens all the time, who won, who lost, what do you think? And I hate to say it, but I have a balanced point of view, and I thought that even in the previous debates, it came out pretty equally. Both candidates had the opportunity to discuss the three important things that we all look at, which are issues, accomplishments, and promises. And they had the 5 or 6 segments on the issues. And I think what's interesting is that you always have the ability to see what a person is proposing and then what they're ignoring. And then the other candidate is opposing those particular positions or the way of getting it done. And I think the challenge for the American people is to really figure out and understand, what the issues are past the candidates and then who is going to deliver on the promises. So I'm glad to be here and would hand this over to Susan.
Well, thanks, Jesse, for inviting me to come on. Again, my name is Susan Swift. You can find me. I contribute at politichicks.com, and you can tweet or Instagram or Facebook me at Real Susan Swift. My overall take from this debate was that it was by and large a wash, but Trump really needed to make the case, and he didn't. I think he really, truly, overall, was Casey at the bat. He did not hit the home run that he needed to. I thought that it was Hillary's best debate to date. Whatever drugs she's on, she should stay on them, especially for the whole presidency because she's going to need them. I just felt like that neither of them really made huge gains or really was able to persuade people who weren't already voting for him. But I don't think Trump did himself many big favors. I think Hillary pretty much did the job. And I also don't think that a lot of people probably watched the whole thing because it became boring and tedious. And I think people probably tuned out after the first maybe 15, 20 minutes.
All right, and that brings up Bill, a.k.a. at Defend Wall Street, regular listener.
I think this was a fun debate. It was definitely vulgarity-free. And, I think Chairman Mao looked really nice in his little white suit there. That was pretty great. I don't know. I'm... Susan says that, people listen to the first 20 minutes. I didn't know that was optional. Chris Wallace told me I was obligated to vote and to watch the debate. So, I had no idea that I could have opted out of this nonsense 20 minutes into it. I mean, come on. Look, this is. I mean, we try to treat this really seriously, and I'll try to pretend that I can. This is a joke election, okay? I mean, we got a guy who, I mean, his campaign advisors are Roger Ailes, a pervert, Steve Bannon, a white supremacist, Kellyanne Conway, who will lie for $1. And Mike, I don't even know what they did to Mike Pence. Look at my friend Mike Pence. I mean, he looks like he had a lobotomy. I mean, he's on TV talking about, elections are rigged and, no, that's not what he really. Chairman Mao looked great. That's all I have to say. Nice suit.
All right. Jen, you're up.
Hi, I'm Jen. I actually did the first debate one. I just didn't do the second one, but it doesn't really matter. So, but I think that this, he's already kind of said it was kind of a wash. There were things Trump needed to do to kind of bring this back under his wing. He didn't. There was just a lot of back and forth that was crazy. I think Chris Wallace tried to do a good job with, reining them in. I thought that the subject matter could have been awesome, but we have two completely deficient candidates that can't even very well make their own points on some of the subjects that matter the most or the issues that matter most to the American people. So at this point, most people's minds are made up. So overall, I think it was kind of a fail, and all of us that are more politically inclined are going to be the ones scrutinizing every second of it. I think the regular, the bulk of the American people tuned out.
All right. I almost forgot. We've got Donna on the line tonight, and she is one of our loyal listeners. Donna, why don't you take a moment and introduce yourself? Donna, you with us, or did we lose you?
I think we may have lost her. I don't hear her.
Neither do I. All right, I will work on getting Donna back. And you guys, that brings up Dan.
Hi, I'm Dan Wright. I do a show Friday nights with Rick called Robinson and Wright, and hop on with him here and there on America Off the Rails or wherever he needs me, just because I love to do it. And as far as the debate goes, I pretty much agree with everybody. It was a wash. I mean, it started off listening to two people talk about the Supreme Court nominees and two people that have both been, at least in the past, very Second Amendment, talk about how much they love the Second Amendment. And Hillary talking about 33,000 gun deaths a year, but not qualifying that 85% of them are suicides, gangbangers, or justified. And it's everything coming out of both of their mouths, at least the first 15, 20 minutes of the debate, was totally disingenuous to me. And then the debate ended, and I turned on the TV, and Chicago's beating LA 10-2, so I didn't miss anything there, so it wasn't a complete wash for me.
Great way to end it, Dan. A little sports report. Got to keep that in. All right. Rick?
All right, so first take, again, kind of got to agree with Bill. Chairman Mao did a pretty good job. She held her own. I think Trump had a few really good points where he could have maybe swung things back in his direction in a pretty heavy way, and he just didn't do it. I honestly, I used to work with a guy named Rick Trader on WNJC 1360. He and I were talking a little bit during the debate tonight, and he kept saying, this is the... He's got to do it now. And in any time it looked like he was going to go for it, he pulled back or he lost it. There were actually, unlike last time, there were times in the second debate where it looked like he was managing to get under her skin, at least for a good portion of it. Tonight it was the exact opposite. She was finding ways to push his buttons, not the other way around. And, I mean, the first debate was terrible. Second one, I pretty much thought kind of the same thing, and this one I really didn't see too much different. I mean, he was talking about how he was going to come out like Mike Tyson, and he came out more like Tom and Jerry. But what do I know?
All right. So Donna is having some technical difficulties, so we'll get her to do both takes at once in just a moment. Now we are talking about the Supreme Court. And again, we're going back to John.
Okay, thanks. Well, I think, we all listened to it and probably took notes. And on the Supreme Court, I just put down both sides. And obviously they talked about guns, abortion, immigration, and the importance of selecting new justices. And I think it's self-evident that, if Hillary wins, she's going to select people who are going to be aligned with her point of view, and then the same with Trump. So I'm not really sure what we can say about that. It's kind of a hypothetical, actually. Who gets in, what they decide. The other thing I think is interesting, though, is that when you dive into the level of issues, I think people who are policy-focused or in the political arena understand the depth of what they're talking about. But I think the average American, they hear stuff like Citizens United, and they really don't know what those code words mean. And maybe even for Roe v. Wade, it's like that happened so long ago, they don't really know what it means. But I think it's pretty interesting in terms of having a debate, allowing people to think about it, and I would encourage people to get more involved in understanding how those issues affect their own lives, and I think that will determine whether or not they support one candidate or another, although, you're down to 20-some days. So that's my quick overview of my view of the Supreme Court discussion.
John, before we move on to Susan, I got a quick question for you. Do you think voters are really going to take the time to educate themselves? I've noticed there is a large volume of low information voters in this country.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. I think that the people who, I've said this to other friends and business people in the past, you get interested in politics when you have something to lose. And you don't have anything to lose until you've already gained something. And that's why I think the people who are involved in policy and politics at the highest level are the top 1%, and then the top corporations, the top lobbyists, attorneys, trade associations, etc. So you're talking the top 1 to 3 to 5%. And then as you move down, there's a whole body of folks who are, they're intellectually in a position to get it, but they just don't have the time. And, I could very easily fall into that world of, a person with, kids and a family and trying to keep things moving along in your life. And you don't have a lot of time to spend on this. And then you think that, well, what you're doing doesn't matter anyway. So I absolutely agree with you. You move down to other folks and they're not paying attention. It's all about celebrity. And they look at candidates as, well, who did what, or who wore what, or who said what, or who was funny. And that's really probably not the way to approach it. Yeah. So.
All right. Thank you, John. Now, Susan, your take on the Supreme Court segment.
Well, to me, it matters a great deal. There's two perspectives because I'm a lawyer and so I'm a little tiny bit more of a legal nerd, I guess, or more interested than, I guess, a lot of people. So for me, that is such an important issue in this election that I can't overstate it. I think that both candidates were very clear about what they would do. Trump was much more, I think he did a better job explaining and connecting on the passion and the simplicity of saying, hey, I don't believe that, cutting up a baby in the womb is a good thing. I think that, partial birth abortion is awful. He did a good job connecting that issue in plain layman's terms to speak about it. And so that probably helped him a little bit. What Hillary did was also, she was adroit. She was very clever and very adroit because she positioned herself as though she were a moderate. and as though Trump were the real radical, and she would throw away around terms like the Heller decision, which is it's one of the Supreme Court decisions that is protecting our right under the Second Amendment to keep and bear arms. And you have to understand what Heller means before, so you really have to have a very, very high level of understanding of these Supreme Court decisions to be able to understand what she's really saying. And so she would throw around terms like that, and she'd also, I think she threw around the term Citizens United. And so she's talking in very high sophisticated terms, which most people kind of don't understand. They don't understand all of the legal intricacies. So she comes off as sounding very, very well informed, and also at the same time very moderate and that she wants to protect, women's rights. Well, who doesn't want to protect women's rights? Other than, ISIS and all those guys in Saudi Arabia who are throwing women under the bus and cutting their heads off, all right? So she's making herself sound very moderate, and then turning and looking at Trump, and I think she did an effective job of making him sound like a little bit of a radical. And I don't know if he was able to bring it back. But on the other hand, I know that regular people who don't understand all of the little picky things about the Supreme Court, they're listening with a different set of ears, and they want to know, what are these guys going to do? Are these two people? Are they going to make the courts be fair and be just and do the morally right thing? I'm hoping that Trump connected on that. But again, I don't know if he closed the deal and brought it home. I know from their two positions and from knowing a little bit more about the law and some of these Supreme Court decisions, that what Hillary is going to do is to put justices on the court who will reinterpret our Constitution to limit individual rights and expand governmental rights, which is the exact opposite of how our country was founded. Our Constitution limits the federal government's rights, and it expands individuals. She wants to undo that. She does not want people on the court who are originalists, and that's what Trump said he wants. But again, this is getting into the weeds, and a lot of people may not know the difference. And she came off sounding like she was going to be very good and very moderate, and it upset me because I do know the truth, and I do to wind it up. I was very pleased to hear Trump say very unequivocally and very clearly and directly that he will appoint pro-life justices on the Supreme Court, and that he is seeking to undo Roe versus Wade and let those types of personal decisions at least go back to the states, so that it's not an overarching federal concern, abortion. At least it goes back to the states. That is a step in the right direction as far as I'm concerned. So I hope people heard it, but I'm not sure if they did, because there's a lot of weeds in there, a lot of legal weeds.
All right. Well, we are going to go a little out of order here. Hey, Donna, are you with us now?
I hope so. Can you hear me now?
Oh, yes. You are coming through loud and clear. And for our listeners, Donna is one of our fans and regular listeners. Now, Donna, I'd like you to take a minute, introduce yourself, give your overall thoughts on the debate, and then your thoughts on the Supreme Court section. We'll get to the rest of the sections in just a minute.
I'm just a person who enjoys following politics, apparently beating my head against the wall. The debate overall was interesting. I agree that as far as the Supreme Court section goes, Hillary did come off some moderate. I don't think that Roe versus Wade would ever be overturned. I don't see getting that many conservative justices back on the court. But I do agree that it's a 10th Amendment issue. It's a state's issue, not a federal issue. I had some little people in my room jumping around on me, so I did not hear all that section. And I don't know. Trump was very graphic in his descriptions, which I was also watching the Twitter feed from the debate, which turned a lot of people off. I mean, it turned some against what she was saying, but it also, even those that disagree with abortion. We didn't really want to hear it put that way. It didn't need to be quite that strong. We get it. I understand the need to emphasize, the horrific nature of abortion, but I think better words could have been chosen, maybe.
All right. Thank you very much, Donna, and thank you for being a loyal listener. And I'm so happy we finally got your technical issues worked. You finally got your technical issues worked out to join us. All right, Bill, your turn.
So the Supreme Court. You know what the name of the game in politics is? It's really called Let's Make a Deal. Let's make a deal with President Obama. Go to Obama and say, look, we agree, we relent. Let's confirm Garland. Because I guarantee you that anyone that Hillary Clinton will put up will be far, far worse than Merrick Garland. Merrick Garland, if you listen to people like Andrew Napolitano and Charles Krauthammer and George Will, and those are people that I think are far smarter than I am, they all say the same thing. This was a good deal, and they should have taken it. And it's not too late. They can still confirm him. They can still hold hearings, and they can still confirm him. Now, Obama can pull him back, but then he looks like the dope. I think they should confirm Garland because look, Trump isn't going to win, regardless of what he says. If he says that he's going to, put people on the Supreme Court that are going to pass a law to make everybody a billionaire like him, it's just he's not going to win. And what you're stuck with now is Clinton. And what we should be doing is trying to keep the House, trying to keep the Senate, pushing Garland in. Because if you push Garland in, you've now solved the imbalance on the court, and maybe Ginsburg will stick it out for a while. Ginsburg is probably the only one that's going to go, I would think anyway. At least in the immediate future, Ginsburg is probably the only one that's going to go pretty soon. Justice Kennedy doesn't look like he's going anywhere. Clarence Thomas is just hitting 25 years now. He ain't going nowhere. So, Roberts is sticking around. The balance of the court is perfectly fine. Right now, they have an opportunity to keep the balance in the court by replacing a conservative judge with a moderate judge, which is far better than replacing them with another Ginsburg. And that's what they're going to get if they have Hillary Clinton. So the time it's time to make a deal now, because the writing is on the wall and it's been there since July, and now it definitely is. I mean, Trump is losing Texas. He's ahead 2 points in Texas. He's ahead 1.5 points in Alaska. Arizona, Nevada, Utah, Colorado, New Mexico, they're all going blue. So make a deal, cut a deal.
All right. I think that's an interesting take on it. Bill, Jen, your turn.
All righty. Well, first of all, I thought this entire discussion was like listening to amateurs discuss the Supreme Court. They both talked about, she started off saying, what kind of country are we going to be? What kind of rights will Americans have? We have to stand up for the American people, women's rights, LGBT, no to Citizens United, all of that stuff. The bottom line is they both had to answer this question. They could have done it very simply. The Supreme Court stands up for the Constitution. It upholds the Constitution. It has nothing to do with all of your feels and other things that you want to happen. It's about interpreting the Constitution. And they both kind of failed at that. I thought Wallace posed to Trump, after when they got into the 2A discussion, and, Hillary came off as being like super pro 2A, except for reasonable regulations, which is just utter crap. But Wallace, says to Trump, we've talked about Roe v. Wade. Do you want to protect it like we protect 2A? Well, he could have very easily put that whole thing to bed if he was skilled at all in this kind of situation by saying, Well, the Second Amendment is written to the Constitution. Roe versus Wade is not. It was ruled constitutional, but it is not an enumerated right in the Constitution. He failed to do that, or other than just babbling on about kind of pro-life stuff, which I know people like to hear, but there's no real weight to it. He's just saying words, and he proved that by saying, by his answers kind of weak and lacking in some of the basic principles of conservative constitutionalism, where he kept saying 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 days prior to birth, Hillary, blah, 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 blah. Well, okay, but what about 3 weeks prior? What about 6 weeks prior? He was focused on this very right at the end of, the third trimester type stuff that I know evokes emotion from people, but doesn't really focus on much about that. And he could have hit her about PP, except for he really can't, because he has come out in support of Planned Parenthood. But she turned it around to the focus, the Supreme Court being the focus on, women and women's health. And, but then she said something that I thought was interesting. She said, we can regulate, abortion basically with the life and health of the mother taken into account. Well, hey, great news. That's cool, because that's so rarely the case. We should have virtually no abortions. He should have capitalized on that, and someone could have that had even not just more aptitude in debate skills, but that's even very good in the political sphere at all. So I don't think that there was a whole lot of depth or weight to this question, and it kind of was just a back and forth that fell flat.
All right. Thank you very much, Jen. Next up, Dan, followed by Rick.
Well, I'll start it off by saying that I agree with Bill. I think the filibuster of Garland was really kind of not a good idea. I personally, when Obama came out with him as his nominee, I was like, that's not too bad. We can live with that. And then it was filibustered, and I don't know. I think we could have done a whole lot worse. But as far as what the candidates had to say, again, Hillary did come off talking about this. Like it's been pointed out tonight that she did kind of come off like with the Second Amendment thing to a certain extent as a moderate. I'm really sick of listening to her talk about the 33,000 gun deaths a year, since the major majority of them are suicides, but that never gets touched on. Maybe we need more suicide prevention. I don't know how more gun laws are going to stop people from committing suicide. But when it comes right down to it, it's deaths with legally owned guns of that 33,000 a year are about 15 or 1,600, I believe, that aren't justified. And the rest of it is deaths by illegal guns and justified deaths and suicide. So, numbers get thrown out that the normal voter listening to this is going to go, oh my God, 33,000 deaths by gun a year? Oh my God, she's right. We need to do something about this. But it's a stupid number. And then with her bringing up Roe v. Wade, well, if anybody had prepped Trump on this, she loves to throw out Roe v. Wade. Well, Roe is anti-abortion now. She thinks the whole thing was a big mistake, but nobody ever brings that up either. And again, I mean, maybe it's because I pay attention and, a lot of people don't, but I just, listening to them both, just a few months ago, Trump was saying how he didn't want to take the funding away from Planned Parenthood. Just listening to both of them, I'm just like, whatever. I mean, but I guess that's me. But I would guess if I looked at it as somebody less informed, it might mean something to me in the debate. But to me, it's all lip service to me. That's all it is. Nothing has swayed me either way. I'm still not voting for either one of them.
All right. And Dan, I have to agree with you on those numbers. I think the numbers should always be cited as how many homicides by legal guns and homicides by illegal guns. And on that note, Rick, you're up.
All right, so I want to back up just a second to the whole foregone conclusion thing, because we've been talking about that for a while. The GOP has managed to float the only candidate who had lost in pretty much every poll head-to-head against Hillary from day one. Not sure how it happened, not sure why it happened. We can debate that at another time. But it's interesting because I occasionally, because of what I do, I listen to talk radio a lot when I'm in the car. I listened to Sean Hannity today, and he let something slip that was kind of surprising to me. He talked about Hillary's victory as if it was already a foregone conclusion. His exact words today were, come November 9th, there will be a reckoning for those of you who helped elect Hillary Clinton, as if it's already happened. I think a lot of people are starting to come to terms with the fact that the polls haven't been wrong this entire time, no matter how much we want to say that they are, and that this would have been his only chance to possibly turn the tide. I don't think he managed to pull it off. Now, on to the Supreme Court. He mentioned the list of, 20 justices that he was referring to. Let's not forget that was actually a peace offering from the GOP that he took, ran with, then walked back, and then kind of adopted it again and said, may not be these exact people, but it'll be somebody like these people.
Can I just interject for a second?
Certainly.
CNN ORC snap poll. Clinton 52, Trump 39.
Ouch.
Drudge snap poll. Trump 120%. Clinton negative 500%. Sorry, that one was just a joke, but go on.
So anyway, now it's interesting that you guys have brought up the Supreme Court nominee that was filibustered. At the time they filibustered it, I kind of agreed with the approach because, I mean, look at it. We were looking at what was supposed to be a stacked field. We were looking at 8 years of some of the worst policies ever. Nobody in a million years thought we were going to walk away with a Hillary Clinton presidency when this thing started. Now that the inevitability seems to be coming to pass, I agree. I think we should go back and play Let's Make a Deal with Obama and try to get the best possible person in there before the lady that looks like she could be flying around on a broom on Halloween gets to make her picks because they're going to be worse than him. And that's just kind of everything in a nutshell.
All right. Well, I've got one little quick thing I happen to, since Bill decided to mention a statistic here, I pulled up Frank Luntz's Twitter account. And for those of you who don't know, Frank Luntz does...
Donna and I were just talking about that.
Frank Luntz does a lot of focus groups. Well, his focus group chose Trump by a 14-12 margin. All right, moving right along. John, that means you're up. John, you with us or did we lose you there?
No, I'm still here. Sorry.
Okay, it is your turn, and the topic on this one, I believe, was immigration. Yes, it is. Immigration and border security.
Yeah, I'm glad we have attorneys on the call, and I think that, what you guys are saying is great. It's interesting that people can agree on broad issues, and then the question becomes, how do you actually implement it? And obviously, there's, I guess I'm sort of waffling on this. I think obviously we need security, we need borders, there's the question of vetting refugees, the question of ISIS infiltration and the Trojan horse, those kinds of ideas. The thing I find interesting is that politicians typically come up with these ideas of, we are going to have comprehensive immigration reform. And I've heard them say it with regard to patents and tax reform. We need comprehensive tax reform, comprehensive patent reform, comprehensive immigration reform. But what the public doesn't really know, and I don't either, is what is comprehensive? What are all the pieces that are involved in it? And, I think it was earlier Susan referred to, once you get into these policies, you really get into the weeds, and it goes well beyond what people think about. So, yeah, you want to have some legal immigration. You want to protect the borders. You want to find a way to make this happen. And I think each candidate mischaracterizes what the other one is going to do. I mean, Donald Trump, and I'm no fan one way or the other, but Donald Trump mischaracterizes Hillary and says she's going to be for amnesty, and that's how it's going to be. And it's interesting. I live in California, so we see the effects of living in a blue state with anybody who's Republican, afraid to say anything. I was surprised today. I saw a guy wearing a Trump shirt, and I actually went up to him and I told him, wow, he was pretty brave to be out in public wearing that in a sort of humorous way. But, you're trading off sort of security and the rule of law against compassion. And what bothers me is the hypocrisy where we see in other countries, and I've heard this in Mexico, that, they're very, very strong in terms of controlling their southern border, and other countries are the same way. And yet we have a policy like, no, it's fine, let them come in. And it's weird because I look at, private clubs in the area. I live in Silicon Valley. So I look at private clubs in the area, and they do not let people in. You have to apply to get into some kind of, club, whether it's a tennis club or a swim club. You have to pay a fee. You have to be interviewed by the people there. And these are the same people who are in the club who are saying, oh, no, we should just let anybody in the country. So it's this whole issue of hypocrisy that I think it drives everybody crazy, and it certainly drives me crazy.
John, I gotta agree with your hypocrisy point. All right, Susan, your turn. Susan, you with us, or did we lose you somewhere? All right, well, Susan seems to be taking a momentary break. We're going to move on to Donna. You still there, Donna?
I'm still there.
All right.
Well,
so
I think this is where his great line about bad hombres came.
Can you hear me now?
In.
Yes, Susan, we got you. We're going to let Donna finish her points, and then we'll be right back to you, darling.
Sorry.
And the Twitterverse went crazy with bad hombre memes. But I don't remember him mentioning the wall specifically this time, which I thought was his major selling point on immigration in his campaign. So I found that interesting. I guess he softened the fifth time on this. I don't know. Where are we with the wall?
I think there was one, this is John, there's one quick interjection where he did say there's going to be a wall, but that was all. He didn't.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, he did.
He did.
I think she
but
mentioned
it
the wall
wasn't.
more than
It
he
wasn't
did.
made very clear.
Yeah, I thought that this was the platform that he was running on. It was, we're going to build a wall, we're going to keep all the bad people out, which he said that all refugees that come in from Syria are bad people, which I'm sure that offended a lot of people. I mean, that can't possibly be true because there are Syrian refugees all over the place here, and they're not constantly killing everyone, to my knowledge. Again, he went sort of way, way into the fear-mongering. She stayed more to the center, and so she just sort of stands back and lets him give himself rope on all these issues, where if he just pulled back a little bit, he wouldn't look so outrageous. And there's just, it doesn't, I don't know, there's just no sense in what he says a lot of times as far as, well, most of anything. He's just very, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. he.
I'll help you out here. I don't think he's
go
a
ahead.
skilled
I'm sorry.
Yeah, this is John. I don't think he's a skilled politician. And I think it's interesting because from the policy standpoint, I worked in government affairs years ago. So hearing what the politicians say, I was always amazed that they were so clear on lots and lots of issues. When I hear Donald Trump, I think there are people who are, don't want to mischaracterize folks, but guys driving trucks and they're just hey, whatever. And when he does his facial expressions and he does, these other things like wrong, they're going, yeah. And it's almost like a cage boxing kind of fight, right? Where he's just saying stuff that's crazy. And there's a certain group of people who are going to respond to that and think it's okay. Whereas the, quote, intellectual folks are looking at it saying, oh, he's terrible. How this will all play out, I really don't know. But, it's almost like playing to the cheap seats or something, kind of in the Shakespearean times where they would do that,
Right. But yes, that's exactly right.
And thank you for the save there, John. And
yes,
that brings us to Susan.
Okay. Have I gotten my audio all straightened out now? Can you all hear me?
You're sounding great to me, Susan.
Okay.
And more reasonable than most.
Well, now, what is it that you wanted me to comment on? Because I'm sorry, I know we've gotten a little bit turned around, so tell me which...
We were on immigration and border security.
And, I don't think we learned anything new between these two guys. I mean, yeah, Hillary set the wall a few more times, kind of trying to smear Trump. That's one of his biggest selling points is the wall. And he managed to work in there a little bit about, people coming over from Syria. But it's nothing new. Nothing got moved on this. It was all kind of, I've been there, done that, I've heard it, and it was boring overall, the exchange. That's my takeaway from it. That, there wasn't anything new, nothing jumped out at me. I just kept looking at, he was wearing red, white, and blue in the American flag, and she was wearing a white pantsuit that made her look like the ice princess that she really is.
Okay, interesting take there, Susan. Bill, immigration and border security.
We talk about this a lot on these roundtables, right? Like, Trump has these missed opportunities, dozens and dozens of them. And there was a really good one here tonight when he was talking about the wall, or they were referencing the wall without mentioning the wall. And he says, oh, well, she voted for the wall in 2006. But he didn't stay on that. And he didn't stay on it, and he didn't articulate it correctly. Look, the border fence, the border wall, whatever you want to call it, it's already a law. It was passed in 2006. She signed on to it. The wall is a law. Now, I think the wall is a stupid thing. I think the wall is an abstract idea. It's something inside of our hearts. But that notwithstanding, a physical deterrent to keep people from coming into the country illegally is already a matter of federal law. It was passed. It just wasn't fun. It was just never funded. They passed the law. They did everything but fund it. And so now there's just kind of like these lousy chain link fences all over the southern border now, So I don't know why he didn't stick on this and why he didn't hammer this home, because she had the opportunity to build the wall. She signed the law. She voted for the law to build the wall. And then when it came time to appropriate money to build it, she said, nah, screw it. I changed my mind. So that would go back to his thesis that she sits in government for 30 years and doesn't do anything. So I don't know why he didn't seize on that. And you know why why I think he didn't seize on it? Because the guy that prepped him for the debate is Chris Christie and Steve Bannon. They want to hear this stuff about walls, and they want to hear They want to hear stuff that looks great for sound bites on Fox and Friends and on Drudge. They're not real interested in policy specifics. But this was a really majorly wasted opportunity for him, that he could have just taken something that she said and turned around and battered her with it. But, again, missed opportunity. They're not going to deport 19 million people. Anybody that actually thinks they're going to deport 19 million people is lying to themselves. They're not going to round up 19 million illegal aliens.
You know how much that would cost?
Yeah.
Not to mention the sacrifice.
The size of the federal force that you would need to do such thing would be giant. You would increase the federal budgetary issues by hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars. So he did do right by saying, look, we're going to get the criminals out of here, and then once we get them out of here and we get them squared away, we're going to see what's left, and then we're going to deal with it. That was a good answer. But again, the wall, it's already a law. They just never funded it. Should have hit her on that, but didn't.
All right, another Trump missed opportunity. Casey at bat struck again. Jen, your take on the issue.
Okay, well, I thought the way that he started this off was, he immediately turned it to himself. I've got 6,500 border security and other law enforcement that have endorsed me, blah, 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 blah. And then went into the whole she want amnesty thing. But that's just what he does. He turns it back to this is why I'm good and great. And that doesn't really do much for most people that aren't already his diehard supporters. I agree with what John said about how, we're expected, the U.S. is expected to basically have an open border policy, but every other sovereign country is allowed to make whatever, rules and regulations they want to regarding immigration. And we're the bad guys for not just opening everything up. I think that, Trump could have kind of hit on that, especially when he brought up meeting with the Mexican president and what their rules are as far as immigration goes. But of course he didn't. I thought, he goes to drugs. He's like, and drugs and the heroin coming in, and we're going to get the drug lords, and we're going to keep the drugs out, and da-da-da-da-da. And then he had that great, that not great, but hilarious.
He's just mad because El Chapo tried to kill him all those times.
We have to get him out. It was just pretty silly. And then she in turn, answers with Carla, the woman I met earlier who has parents, some person she's never met that she just made up that, some sort of anecdote to try to make her seem like human, basically. It was just kind of laughable the way they started out handling this. And then she talks about comprehensive immigration reform. When he gets a chance to answer, he talks about something that drives me crazy. He says getting back online instead of in line. And that's just a personal thing. But, how they can get back in line after we've weed out, who shouldn't be here or whatever. Well, that's essentially a form of amnesty in its own way. And, what we've heard from Trump and what his supporters are so apparently angry about, and it's why they support him so much, is because of his no amnesty, no takebacks, no nothing. We're just going to, Mexican immigration especially, but immigration overall is out of control, and we're going to lock down the borders and build the wall. And that goes back on that. I know that they make excuses on that front, but as someone that's not a Trump supporter, I go, wait, what? Just again with the hypocrisy. I thought that she had a really good dig when she said, we want to give them a path to citizenship so that we can bring them out of the shadows, and employers can't exploit them and undermine American wages if they are brought to work and out of the shadows legally. And like Trump used for Trump Tower, and he took advantage of these immigrant workers. That was a good little dig on her part. But then, he went on to say, Obama has deported X amount of people. Well, what's the point there? I thought we're supposed to be arguing that Obama and the Democrats are terrible on immigration, and now you're buffing him up saying he deported these many people. Do you disagree with him on that? It just didn't line up. And of course, then they divulged into the whole Russia, Putin, WikiLeaks, yada, 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 that just kind of got way off topic. But I think that I think that Trump really missed, again, quite a few places where he could have drilled a few things home. And like we said, he barely mentioned the wall, which has been a cornerstone of his campaign. So he talked about his meeting with the Mexican president and how they're going to have such good relations, better relations, bigly relations with Mexico, that, the president of Mexico tweeted not hours after Trump's plane took liftoff that he was, he did not agree to a wall, and they certainly were not going to pay for it. So I don't know that was a good point to make and try to use as far as look at how this is going to be better and how we're going to do better. I just think they just didn't really discuss this issue very well at all. It was a lot of throwing back and forth and anecdotes and just look at me, I'm doing better than him, or I'm going to do better than her. And for me, as someone that pays so much attention to these things, it just doesn't resonate at all, and it's kind of laughable the way they discussed it.
All right, before we get to Dan, Susan, as the lawyer in the group, I got a question for you.
Okay, I'll make it up. I'll make up the answer like a good lawyer.
Can Mexico really tell us we can't build a fence or a wall on our side of the border?
I have no idea. That would be international diplomacy, but I'd like to see them try to stop us.
Okay, because I know if I want to build a fence on my property, as long as I've got the permits and the survey to prove it's on my side of the property line, there isn't a whole lot my neighbor can do.
Well, you know what? It all kind of probably comes down to the UN and whether we're going to let them tell us what to do and if we're going to be part of this big one world global order. I have no idea. I thought sovereign nations could build their own borders. But apparently maybe we can't. I don't know. I sure would like to try, and I'd love to be able to get into a war with Mexico over that's our fence or no, that's our land. That would just be brilliant. But at the end of the day, this is semantics when we get down to it, because we don't have the willpower to stop illegal immigration. We could stop it overnight if we wanted to. Wall or no wall, we could stop it. That is what is wrong with America, is our will to do what is right for our country. That's the issue, not the wall or who's going to pay for it. We've already said we were going to build the wall, and Congress has said, well, here's money for the wall. It's just never getting done. And to now say, well, gee, Mexico might not let us build a wall on the border. Well, you know what? We can solve that, but first you have to have the willpower to do it. And then you have to oppose other people who say, well, no, you can't build a wall. That's just silly. Of course we can. The problem is, do we have the willpower to do it? And that's one of the big questions of this election.
All right. I've got one little note on immigration. And for those of you who aren't familiar with my show, Jesse's POV, I cover the international side of things. I can usually tell you more about what's going on in Mosul, Turkey, North Korea, or Iran than U.S. politics. So, interesting little factoid for the night. Japan does not allow Muslims to immigrate. All right. And on that note, Dan, you're up.
All right. Well, I'll kind of add to that. A little bit. What you all just talked about. I think the bigger thing with the whole thing with Trump and Mexico's president was Mexico's president saying, we ain't paying for the wall. That was the big thing. I don't think it was so much he said, you can't build a wall. He said, I'm not paying for the wall. You want to build a wall. I'm not paying for it. Which I agree with. Why should Mexico have to pay for a wall if we want to put a wall up? It makes no sense to me. But other than that, there's an account I follow on Twitter that I really love. It's called Anonymous Jobs. And it posts a meme every few days. And the meme is a kind of a little cartoon of a wall with an arrow going under the wall and an arrow going over the wall and an arrow going with a break through the wall. That's what's going to happen with a wall. The border can be secured. I mean, everybody says, well, Israel has a wall. They don't have a wall. They have a fence. There's a little bit of wall there, maybe, but it's mostly just fence.
Well, they do have one, but the Palestinians
their
tunnel
fence
under
is
it.
patrolled. It's patrolled. I mean, you want to secure the borders. We have ways to electronically and aerially secure the border. I mean, to spend billions and billions of dollars to build a wall that is going to get tunneled under, either way, you still have to patrol it. It's. But I'll leave it at that. I think Hillary actually kind of missed something. And obviously, I'm definitely not a Hillary supporter, but she missed some stuff on the whole immigration thing with Trump. They both missed stuff. I mean, it's watch them and things when one is talking and then the other is talking. Things go through my head, and I'm just like, y'all are missing it on each other big time. The whole immigration debate to me is just, we have immigration laws. It goes back to the whole Second Amendment thing. We have gun laws. We don't need more gun laws. We don't need more immigration laws. We just need immigration laws that are enforced. The immigration laws are there. I mean, I mentioned this, I think, in the last debate, Joe, and it's funny that we're on this today because she just had her ceremony. I have a friend that just got her citizenship, and she did everything right. She went through and did everything the way she was supposed to do it, and she had her ceremony today. She's so proud. She's an American citizen today. She did everything right. That's all we have to do is enforce it, that you do everything right. You do everything by the law. The laws are already there. The whole immigration debate makes no sense to me because the laws are already there. Either one of them should be saying is, why don't we just enforce the laws that are there? Now, one of the points that Hillary could really have come at him with is that literally, if you lay Donald Trump's written immigration plan over the top of Marco Rubio's written immigration plan, they're almost identical. Yet, Trump spent the primary slamming Rubio for his immigration plan. Why doesn't Hillary pick up on that? They both miss so much, and that tells me that they're both not fit for the job. I just don't think either one of them is fit for the job at all.
All right,
well, I can agree with that. Sorry, but I had to agree with that. No. They're neither.
I mean, I think that's kind of the foregone conclusion we've reached through the four debates is we really don't have a fit candidate in the two primary major parties. We definitely don't currently have a fit candidate in the two other major secondary parties, which would be the Libertarian and the Green Party. Jury's still out for me on Evan McMullin. I can't vote for him anyway, so it wouldn't matter. Now, as far as immigration, and this is just because I'm the guy that eats, sleeps, and breathes history, politics, everything else. Trump kind of had a noobs moment when he started talking about the fence because Hillary point blank said, "Hey, I voted for that," and then he said, "No, you didn't." Yeah, actually, she did, and you can actually look up and see that she did vote for it. And to everybody else that's looking for the Bloodsport moments and the gotchas and everything else, that probably wasn't a big deal. But to me, it reminded me a lot of Gary Johnson's Aleppo moment because it just proves this guy really doesn't know anything about how government actually works. He understands that by the time you put the ingredients together, you get an omelet, but he doesn't really understand what it takes to make the omelet because he kept saying, well, you should have fixed it when you were in the Senate. You should have done this. Half of the things he was saying she should have fixed when she was in the Senate doesn't even do anything about. So missed opportunity there as far as immigration. I think he's been back and forth way too many times for my taste, to put it bluntly. I think we could do a lot of the things that he's talking about doing without making it as vulgar and as vocal as he's made it at times, and we need to seriously look at revamping our immigration system. I don't think anybody on this panel would disagree with that. We have technology to make things easier, smoother, and do the background checks well enough where we can make sure the crazy people are not getting across the border while still enforcing our laws. That's all we're asking people to do. We are a nation of laws. The biggest thing that people have an issue with Hillary Clinton about this election cycle, she got away with breaking the law. The biggest thing that people have issues with immigration about this election cycle is people every single day are getting away with breaking the law. Stop telling me it's okay for people to break the law, but quit telling me how you're going to do it to fix it, and just do it. These people have jobs. They all have jobs. Nobody's done it. They'll vote for it for the feel-good moment. McCain did the same thing in 2008. Vote for me and I'll finish the fence. Where's the fence? It's kind of like the old Wendy's commercial. Where's the beef? It just didn't happen.
All right. Sounds great, Rick. I'm going to ask all of you to hold your thoughts for just 1 minute while I take the briefest of commercial breaks along with station identification. And I will get my tongue untied one of these days, folks. It's been a week. It's been an interesting week. Just hang tight, kids. We will get this taken care of.
You are listening to KLRN Radio, where liberty and reason still reign.
All right, I think we're just going to leave it at the station identification, and let's pick back up with John.
So are we still on the same topic, or are we switching?
No, we are moving on. I'm going to ask you to combine the economy, and if you want to mention any the reactions to the allegations on sexual assault while you're there, be my guest.
Yeah, I'd rather talk about the economy.
Can't say I blame you. Can't say I blame you.
Yeah. I actually, here's an interesting thing, and this came up a moment ago when you talked about the wall, and I'll switch to the economy really fast. Yes, the Secure Fence Act of 2006 was passed, and you're right, it wasn't funded. I just was looking at it as we were on here. And apparently the appropriation would have been $4.1 billion, but it exceeded the annual budget of the Border Patrol, which is only $3.5 billion. So what's interesting is politicians say, I want to do this program. This is great. And then it's passed, right? But then they have to go somewhere to get the funds. So they have to go to the appropriation.
So you're saying that the appropriation was how much and versus their budget? Yeah. I just want to make sure I got the numbers right on that.
The appropriation.
I said I just wanted to make sure that I got the numbers right on that. What was the budget versus how much they needed?
Oh yeah, right. The budget of the Border Patrol, but that's just the Border Patrol back in 2006 was 3.5.
Well, yeah. I'm saying
and
it was 3 point.
Yeah, 3.5.
Okay.
And then the expected appropriation or the mandate that was estimated was 4.1. So they're saying, hey, we need 110% more money, then we'll build the wall. So what I'm saying is it's easy for a politician to say, hey, I believe in all this, let's build the wall, it's great. And then the next question is, well, where do we get the money? Oh, I don't know, we'll need 4.1. Let's throw it over to appropriations, and then it never gets funded. And this really comes to the whole question of the fact of, we have a $20 trillion debt. Everybody has ideas for programs and things that they want to do. Anybody, and I'll just use the House as an example, they got to get 218 other people to agree with them to get anything done, and then get the Senate to agree, and then get the President to sign to get a bill passed and get a law, put into effect. And then ultimately they have to get the whole thing funded. So you're talking about U.S. budget, I think it's like $3.8 trillion now, somewhere in that range. And you're saying all this funding, how are we going to use it? So it's really kind of a reallocation or transfer payments that need to be applied to different programs, and everybody has a pet program, and, not everything gets funded. So I think one of the critical things of all of the programs that we hear about are you have to get the economy working again. And then once you have that happening, it's just like, when you're doing well in your life. When you have discretionary income, you can say, yeah, we'll take a vacation, we'll buy a new house, we'll get 2 new cars, we'll do all that. But when you're tight and you've already said, look, I'm making $100,000 a year and I'm borrowing another $100,000 every year for the next 10 years, life isn't going to be so great. And that's kind of where we are with the country. We're borrowing a lot of money. We're, selling bonds, and we're hoping that nobody understands what the kind of show game is. But, the scary part, and, a lot of the conservative guys in talk radio talk about this. They say, wow, what if we end up at 30 trillion or 40 trillion? And from an economic standpoint, it is unsustainable because there's only several ways to dig your way out of a debt crisis of that enormity. I have friends in finance, and they say they actually have it wired. There's only 3 ways to do it. They say you either inflate your way out of the debt completely, which is a long-term thing. You renege on the debt, which is the whole worst case scenario, saying, hey, China, we're not going to pay you, or whoever the debtors are, or we're going to partially work our way out of this by growing the economy and lending money to small businesses to make it work. And there's only, a handful of ways to do that. And it gets so complicated. Again, the American people don't understand. They just say, hey, give me my X, give me my benefit, give me my this, give me my that. But I think, if we're going to talk about balanced budgets in the economy, you have to look at this as an adult. And, I don't know if we have adults who are economically literate in Congress and the Senate. And that continues to be a problem. So that's my view on the economy and spending.
All right. Thank you very much, John. That means, Susan, you've got the economy and the sexual assault allegations.
Well, again, I just don't think that I just didn't like any of the way that any of it got presented. I mean, all we've heard about was the sexual assault, allegations, business back and forth in the media. Trump talked a little bit about how, these women have been discredited. I mean, he started going on the defensive again, and it's all boring. And I just was waiting for him to land it back on Hillary and start mentioning something about these undercover videos from Veritas, from Project Veritas, and from the WikiLeaks. And he should have hit harder on the videos of Democracy Partners and exposing how the Democrats and the Foval group are paying goons to incite violence. I loved how he brought in when he did, and I loved how he said, he made the point that Hillary is accepting money from governments that behead women and throw gay people off of buildings. That was really good. But these are, small points, and then he would get rolling on it, and then he would just kind of spin out as though somebody told him he needed to really rein it in. So I just didn't see that he handled it. I kept seeing missed opportunities is how I kept seeing it. The one quote that I think was a great zinger for him was, "Such a nasty woman." That was Trump's quote of the night. He didn't really seem to hit back up or justify these 9 women allegations. I don't know why he didn't really bring up the fact that, this is the last 3 weeks of the campaign. And now, and also he had a brilliant opportunity, because in the news media, of course, today, we've had allegations that Hillary Clinton's bag man for 20 years or something has now stepped forward and is on, revealing everything in the National Enquirer, that Hillary and Bill were using him to bring in sexual partners, and that Hillary is actually, bringing in, women, so that she's a lesbian. And since Trump has been, since the media and Hillary Clinton have been hammering away on Trump and these women who've come forward in the last, at the 11th hour, I think that would have been perfectly fair to do. But he didn't. And I don't know, I don't understand the strategy for it, but it just seemed like, he was kind of flat and kind of, it just didn't impress me. I wanted him to expose the other thing that was driving me crazy is that he didn't really bring up all of the revelations that have been pouring out of the Project Veritas, and it shows how corrupt Hillary Clinton's campaign is. They know. He mentioned it a couple of times how they incited violence, but it was only one moment. It was only one moment, and I wanted him to do a lot more than that. So it left me kind of flat and wondering, is he really in this to really make the points against her?
All right. Thank you, Susan. That means, Donna, it's your turn. Both sexual assault and the economy.
I'm going to go for the economy first. I don't like either of their plans. I don't think either is reasonable. Hillary can't say that she wants to create jobs, period, because that's not the government's job to begin with. But then in the next breath say that she's not going to increase the national debt, because that would be exactly what it would do. Trump's plan to basically scare companies into staying in the United States isn't going to work either. The sexual assault charges, he flat out denied that all these women, that they were just after, their 10 minutes of fame or whatever, and that he didn't do anything with them, but they had all been vetted and it's backed up. So, we know that is true. The whole back and forth with that was interesting, because they could have gone after each other harder. He really could, as she said, gone after Hillary with the Project Veritas videos, because I watched the first one and it was pretty bad. He had the perfect opportunity to use that great word bird dogging that keeps going around, and ask her about that. And he didn't go after that at all. She didn't hit him as hard with the allegations as I thought she would tonight. And but then I thought it was interesting that after all that, and he says, "There's no one that respects women more than I do," the audience laughed. And then he closes with, "What a nasty woman." So just, an odd series of paradoxes from Trump, but kind of come to be used to that. So that's pretty much what I have on that.
All right. Thank you, Donna. I gotta say, if he actually said those, and like I admitted up front, I really didn't watch or listen to this debate. I was kind of busy. But if he actually said no one treats women better than he does, and then said, "What a nasty woman," he stepped in it.
Oh, yeah. Jesse, I hate to interrupt, but did you catch this? If you guys weren't listening to the CBS feed, you might have missed this. This was right after the debate. You just said that nobody. This is referring how Trump has said no one respects women more than me. This was hysterical. This is on CBS right after the debate. There were 4 moderators up there. It was the second woman over. I believe she's a black woman. I don't remember her name, but she gave the quote. But what she said, it was a Freudian slip. She said Bill Clinton was the one who said that he had no one has more respect for women, and she said it. She didn't. I know she didn't mean it. I know she was quoting Trump, but she said Bill Clinton, saying no one else has more respect for women, and she quoted it as Bill Clinton. I just fell on the floor laughing out loud that this woman had said that. So there's your Freudian slip from the media for the night. And that was on CBS immediately following the debate. I laughed out loud. Sorry to interrupt, but there you go.
The interruptions are what makes this show fun. All right. So I believe someone correct me if I've lost track, but I believe that brings us back to Bill for both sexual assault and the economy.
I don't know. The economic thing, I mean, everybody pretty much said everything that was going to be said about that. I mean, the sexual assault thing just isn't going to go away. It's just not going to go away. I personally believe that most, if not all, of those women are telling the truth. I don't think most normal people would put themselves out on a... I mean, like that lady from People magazine. I mean, Megyn Kelly made a really great point about that, right? She's like, why would a woman from People magazine, you know, they're not really known for political hit pieces. You know, they write about Martha Stewart's, you know, latest upholstery. You know, so I don't know. You know, any shred, any possibility I ever had of voting for Donald Trump went out with that Billy Bush video. And I personally don't see how I can reconcile that with not only my morals, my principles, anything. I don't know how anybody could. You know, but if you can, and you can still hold your nose and vote for him after all this, you know, go for it. But not me.
All right. Thank you, Bill. And I believe Rick shares your never Trump. Rick and Dan share your never Trump, never Hillary stance, I believe, on both of them. All right. That brings us to Jen. Sexual assault, the economy, and any other quirky things you want to bring up.
Well, I think on the economy, I mean, it was just a lot of talking points. You know, Hillary goes through when the middle class thrives, America thrives. And then we want to fight climate change, you know, and embrace clean energy, help small businesses, raise the minimum wage, equal pay for women, blah, blah, blah. You know, she talks about the preschool through college, technical school, apprenticeships, debt-free college, you know, and that they're going to go where the money is, make the wealthy pay more, and make the corporations make greater contributions. How on earth are you going to do that? Are you serious with private corporations? You're going to make them pay for more things? I mean, that's just completely anti-American and anti-liberty. But I felt like it was a lot of lip service. Trump could not lay out an economic plan to save his life. And Hillary didn't do much better. I mean, it was just, like I said, a lot of talking points and no details. How are you going to help small businesses? How are you going to, you know, he went to say some things about trade deals and yada, 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 but he still didn't say what kind of trade deal. He didn't say how he would grow the economy very much, other than we'll cut taxes and business taxes massively. And then hit her on raising taxes, and she says she won't. You know, it's just a bunch of more of the same. So I don't think that accomplished anything at all, and neither one of them really laid out anything specific that you could hang your hat on. When it comes to the sexual assault stuff, I think there's such a massive hypocrisy here on the part of both Democrats and Republicans. People that are supporting Trump and are excusing his words as locker room talk, disbelieving the women that have come forward, immediately writing them off and calling them liars and saying that they're out for a payday or some sort of 15 minutes of fame, which Trump played into, is just absurd. I mean, there is a history here. He has decades of harassment suits and various other things settled out of court. He's got an ex-wife that accused him of rape that was dropped, and then she recanted for a large sum of money. I mean, there are so many things to go on here other than this just one certain clip for you to have any reason to give this some validity. So as a woman, I feel like it's completely disgusting that Republicans are not only defending him on this, but excusing it, giving a pass, and then they're pointing the finger back at Democrats and saying, "Will but Bill, will but Bill," and that's true. Like Bill has had his fair share of problems in the woman department, but I don't think that it resonates with the public when you say Bill committed this crime, so who cares that Trump committed this crime? And Hillary helped cover it up, and I think that's something that you should point out. She shamed these women. She made their lives hell. And I think that that's something that should be said and should be, harped on quite a bit. But the crime, pointing out the crime versus the cover-up doesn't really resonate with the American people. They don't see her. She's not the one that did it. Her husband did, who is not running for president, and Trump is. So I just don't think that it equates very well. In addition to that, I think that the hypocrisy of, we're going to be so, on the Democratic side, we're going to be so outraged by these things that Trump said and by what he's possibly done, but we're going to completely give a pass, circle the wagons, excuse, cover and justify all of the sexual deviance they've had on their side that they've kept in office, or at least tried to keep in office over the last several decades. So I think it's just complete hypocrisy all the way around, and no one really has a leg to stand on when it comes to this stuff right now.
As always, Jen, an outstanding take on it. And thank you for being willing to brave the more sensitive, as some would say, of the two topics. All right. Dan.
Oh, harassment, abuse thing. I really am just done with it. I follow probably pretty much along the lines of Bill. Why would anybody come out? Why? I mean, I believe most of what anybody says on either end of it. And I don't see the keep a scumbag out of the East Wing by putting a scumbag in the West Wing approach. It makes no sense to me. It makes zero sense to me at all. As far as the economy goes, I see what both of them say as the typical debate, the typical presidential debate. I'm running for president. I am going to tell you that I am going to just eliminate everything and everything's going to be great and I'm going to balance the budget, and it's just all a bunch of bull. I don't believe either one of them. I'm sick of listening to it. I've been listening to it for years. I left the GOP 13 years ago for a reason, because I didn't want to be a part of the uniparty, and that's exactly what it is. And they all say they're going to do this and they're going to do that. And I'll admit that, Clinton, he did a good job with the budget. And Reagan did a pretty good job with the budget, but I don't believe any of them. I really don't. And I love Reagan. He's a hero of mine. I don't believe any of them. It's all big government, both sides, and our taxes are always going to go up. And at this point, the national debt is always going to go up. There's no way around it. If you listen to both of them, with what both of them want to do, the national debt is going to go up. I don't care what they say. Boy, am I a pessimist, aren't I?
All right. I got a couple of things to say before we head around the horn one more time. First, Bill at Defend Wall Street on Twitter unfortunately had to leave us a little early and kind of suddenly. And I want to thank him for participating, and I'm sure you'll be back again for something else, Bill. Is there anybody else before we pick up with Rick that needs to get a move on?
This is John, and I guess we've been on for about an hour and a half, so I actually have to move on. But I really appreciate the time having this conversation with everybody, and I thought it was a great roundtable. Thank you.
John, before you go, do you have any last-minute thoughts on the debate?
Any final thoughts on the debate?
Yes, please.
Yeah,
and then,
again,
of course, you can give any social media information or contact information out that you'd like to put out there.
Oh, okay. So, as I mentioned at the beginning, we have a online debate website called ilobby.co, and the intent is that average people can come in, debate topics, figure out what they want to get done, and through crowdsourcing and crowdfunding, make something happen. And so the quickest way to get information is just go to ilobby.co. And then if you sign up, that'll direct you to some other relevant social media things on Facebook and Twitter and those kinds of things. But the idea is, I actually think that we need to empower the American people to take the voices that you guys are bringing up here and come up with solutions to complex problems. I think the politicians are not nailing the issues the way they need to, and I think it's evident from the dissatisfaction that so many people show every time we look at this. So, I love it.co. That's it.
All right.
Well, hey, thanks for being here, John.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. It was really good talking to you guys. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Not a problem. And if you'd ever like to come on, just hit up our station manager, Ann, who I believe you already have her contact information.
I do. Thank you so much.
Not a problem. And thank
bye,
you.
guys.
And have a great night.
Okay. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
All right. Anybody else going to cut out before we finish up?
I'm here till the
one
bitter
more
end.
round.
And who said one more round?
That's me, Dan.
Okay, Dan. Great. And I know it's getting late for some of you, so what I'd like to do is kind of combine it, since we have hit what I think most of the major topics. What I'd like to do is have you kind of cover, and we're going to start this with you, Rick. So you're going to hit everything from sexual assault on to the end of the debate, which would be sexual assault, fitness to be president, for security, foreign policy, ISIS, and national debt, and why they should be president, which I already know your answer for both of those.
All right, so let's start with the first couple of topics. We can kind of run through them here pretty quick because I know we're getting long on the tooth. Okay, so sexual assault. Look, I only have one question for Mr. Trump. Would you like a pudding pop, sir? The reason I ask that is because, as far as I'm concerned, as soon as those allegations came to the forefront, they should be treated with the same scrutiny that both Bill Clinton's and Bill Cosby's eventually were. I don't care if they're being made up or not. The simple fact of the matter is we believe he's innocent until proven guilty, but we also have to take the word of the accusers until they're proven otherwise. So those should have been taken very seriously. I think a lot of them have been swept under the rug, and these are things that are coming up from the past, and everybody's like, oh, look, they're happening within 3 to 4 weeks of the election. It's all a plant. It's all a setup. No, it's not. The simple fact of the matter is there was one person who finally stood up. That's the same thing that happened with Bill Cosby 30 and 40 years after the fact. Somebody stood up and the dam broke. It's the same thing we saw happen with Bill Clinton. So I don't care whether you supported Clinton, you didn't support Clinton, and now whether you support Trump or you don't support Trump. If you have the opposite stance that you have now, you're a hypocrite. Because the simple fact of the matter is, if you were bashing Bill Clinton for the things that he did, and now you're trying to defend Donald Trump, then you're a hypocrite. If it's the reverse, where you were excusing everything that Bill Clinton did, and now you're trying to bash Donald Trump, then you are also a hypocrite. Simple fact of the matter is, everything they did, if it comes to fruition to be true, was absolutely wrong. And some of the things that are coming out for the Clintons is now even more scary. I think Susan referenced some of that stuff earlier. Now, as far as the economy and the rest of it. Look, both their policies are going to suck for everybody. They're both big government spending liberals, whether anybody wants to admit it or not. They both want basically government-run healthcare. They're both looking at ways to make the government pay for a portion, if not all, of the healthcare services. They're looking at other ways to pick up government tab for things like education. They both think that the federal government needs to have centralized control over education. That's also not a very conservative idea. They're also... he just to kind of go off topic for a second, he kept mentioning how staunchly he supports the Second Amendment. He's the only conservative candidate that I know that says he wants the no-fly list to become the no-buy list. That is not a Second Amendment stance. Not only is it not a Second Amendment stance, it also throws the Fourth Amendment out the window for a very, what may or may not be for the moment, a very small segment of the population. Then we also have the fact that he has actually said that he wants to mandate federally the death penalty for cop killers. And before anybody wonders where I'm going with this goes to the next question. Is he fit to be president? No, those things tell us that he's not. Is she fit to be president? No. She's complicit in, or she should be considered complicit in the death of 4 Americans. She has conspired to keep information away from the American people. She has conspired and with gross negligence mishandled classified material. Even FBI Director Comey said she was negligent. Then he said there's no intent. That specific U.S. code that he references never says anything about intent. You don't need intent for negligence. There just has to be an act that was committed, and there was. And as soon as she pencil-whipped the documentation that says she understood the briefings and how classifications work, as soon as she signed that stuff, it was legally binding. It didn't matter if she read it, understood it. The simple fact of the matter is she signed it. How many times as a kid growing up were you told, always, 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 once you're old enough to sign contracts, read them, make sure you understand them before you sign them because they are legally binding. The same thing happened with those agreements, even if she did pistol whip them. So I think I pretty much ran through them all really quickly, but I think I covered most of them. So next person, please.
All right, that would bring us back to Susan.
Okay. Well, I'll give you my take of this whole night, and then I'll follow it up because some of the points that Rick makes are very good ones. Where do I even begin? Out of the gate, Trump had golden opportunities to bring up the undercover videos showing that the DNC and the Clinton campaign are corrupt and in collaboration with each other, but he didn't capitalize on it until maybe about an hour in. If he wins, it will be because enough Americans have heard of WikiLeaks and Project Veritas, and because of conservative talk radio, and because Hillary is truly frightening. This was Trump's opportunity to introduce regular Americans to those undercover videos and WikiLeaks emails, but he flubbed it. He keeps assuming people are following every little thing, but most people are trying to just keep their ends meeting during the day, food on the table, and catching maybe a little bit of news in between songs that might bring them a little bit of joy in a really scary, depressing world with 2 and 3 jobs sometimes you got to keep. So he needed to connect and he didn't. This was Hillary's best tonight. Whatever drugs she's on, she really needs to stay on them. Her eyes look kind of glassy and weird. I believe she probably is on levodopa, which is a chemical that helps mask Parkinson's symptoms. She didn't cough. She didn't cross her eyes or fall over once. So that's a win for her. She appeared very balanced and very experienced. Her optics were right on point. She actually tried to make Trump look a little bit more radical than she did to the right, and I think it was somewhat effective. But the one interesting thing I wonder about, and I've seen a couple tweets on, she may have committed treason in revealing on live TV the lag time between the presidential order and the nuclear missile launch. She said it took 4 minutes, and she said that on live TV. And I wonder, is that treason? I've never heard of what the lag time is, and I'm just wondering, is that highly confidential classified information? And I'm wondering if the news media is ever even going to pick up on that, because I don't think that you would ever want that information out on media anywhere. And she said it on live TV. Very, very bad judgment. as far as what's going to be going on tomorrow, I think the media is going to spin this in the only way they can, which is they're going to say Trump is dangerous. He is an existential threat to our electoral process because he might not accept the results of the election. And the media is jumping on that. They're going to turn this into Trump is a crazy lunatic and might destroy our republic, because that's the only thing that they can do to spin away from the damaging Project Veritas and the WikiLeaks that show the DNC and Democracy Partners and Americans United for Change have colluded together to create voter fraud and voter intimidation in favor of Hillary Clinton's campaign. So what the media is going to do is what they always do. They're going to project their candidate's truth onto their enemy, who is Trump. So they're going to project the truth of Hillary Clinton, that she is in cahoots, she is violating campaign finance laws, and she is colluding with Americans United, Democracy Partners, the DNC. They've already stolen the election from Bernie Sanders. That was done before the regular election got going, and now she's doing the same thing. And this has been going on for 50 years. I mean, that's what these people are alluding to. But what tomorrow the media is all going to be about is that Trump is a dangerous man, and he is threatening riots and threatening not to accept our election. And they are going to totally ignore the fact that our elections are indeed rigged. We have proof of it now. So that's what they're going to be doing. As far as what Rick said, and I agree with so much of what he said, at the end of the day, though, we have a tactical decision to make. There is a chance that Evan McMullin may take Utah, which if he does, he's a minor character in the presidential races. He's not on all the ballots, but he is in Utah. And there is at least a scenario out there that says if he takes Utah, that's 6 electoral votes, he then can skew the electoral college enough so that the election might be thrown to Congress to make, under our laws, and then we might end up with a very different president other than Hillary or Trump. We may actually end up with Evan McMullin. But assuming that doesn't happen, because that's usually not the way to bet in Vegas, at the end of the day, you and I and anybody else listening to this and who cares, we have to choose between these two clowns. Now, I hear what Rick is saying, and I've heard the tape about what Trump said. And the only thing that I find is totally unprecedented, at least as far as I can remember, is that the media and everybody is crucifying a man for something that is completely uncorroborated. We don't have any evidence that he did any of the things. He just was sitting there saying it. It's crude and it's rude. And he said, yeah, I said it. But we don't have proof that he's grabbing women or abusing women or assaulting women. We have a few women coming forward right now who are alleging it, but we don't actually have any proof. We don't have anything in the court of law. We don't have anything that's measured. We don't have affidavits. All we have is a media circus going on. Now, contrast that to what we actually know about Hillary Clinton. We actually have evidence that she's deleted 33,000 emails, top secret ones. She bleach bit it. She is hiding things. Those are felonies. We have more and more proof coming out in WikiLeaks and these other videos of actual things that she has done. We have her corruption is verified. And so as between the two things, I have to make a judgment between two different people, one that people are saying things about but I don't have any proof yet, and one that I have actual proof on. And we have to make a very serious and very sober vote, because we have to protect our country. And I don't know how we protect our country if we hand it over to the woman who has violated our laws and who has turned the FBI and the DOJ into her own private lapdogs. I can't allow that. And so as uncomfortable as I might be and anybody else might be, I have to go with Trump, because there doesn't seem to be another option to stop Hillary. If things come out later and things are actually proved that he did what he said he did, I'll accept that. But right now, today, it is not true as far as we know. And you have to look at it very carefully, because we have actual facts of actual deeds that this woman and her husband have done for 30 years. And we're being told by a media that is completely biased that somehow Trump is dangerous to women, dangerous to our country. And I can't buy it because I don't have the proof. And at the end, if I have to close with one thing, I miss Ronald Reagan.
All
Well, I can
right.
agree with you on that.
Susan, I gotta say, I miss Ronald Reagan as well. And
Who doesn't?
Well, Hillary doesn't.
I meant on this panel.
I think you're mostly conservative territory here, Susan. All right. Donna.
That's where Donna just texted me. She had a kid thing come up. She had to drop out.
Okay. Thank you for the
She wanted me to let you know.
Thank you very much. I believe that was Dan. All right. Yep. So that brings us to Jen. And Jen, the floor is yours.
Well, I think, I'm going to back it up just a second to where they got into like the Clinton Foundation stuff. I think, again, another missed opportunity on Trump's part to really hit on, I mean, Wallace brought up, the donors getting special access / contracts, and why that should be seen, as something nefarious and obviously like a conflict of interest for her to still participate in. And I thought it was great. A great point was made by Trump when he said, you want to talk about women's rights? How about all the money you've received from countries that treat certain groups of people so terribly? Unfortunately, he didn't expound upon that and didn't drive the point home. But that's something that absolutely should be highlighted by anyone that pretty much has a soul about her dealings with her supposed charitable organization. Moving on from that, I think they talked about the rigged election, about him saying it was rigged. And then, she rightly pointed out that that's kind of his thing. It's his mindset. It's how he is. He said the FBI was rigged. The Republican primary was rigged. The court system was rigged. The Emmys were rigged. All of that kind of stuff. I mean, it really, she did a good job of driving that point home that, this is what he says when he feels either slighted or he loses something. And he's going to do that with the election. And he's already said, I'm going to keep you in suspense. I think that was such a big moment that is being, put out there on Twitter as a big moment of the debate, but I think will overall be somewhat overlooked by the average person, that this is a big deal to say that someone stole the election, they won't accept the results, or that they'll look at it at the time and then decide if they will. We all know that the Democrats have been hypocritical on this, where they've been coming out lately and saying this is dangerous rhetoric, and they can't remember a time where anyone ever said so. I mean, come on, the election of 2000. Absolutely, they've had candidates do this. Martin O'Malley said it in a campaign email about, fraud and rigged elections. This is not a new thing, and for them to act so appalled by it is kind of silly and hypocritical. But it was extremely unprecedented for a presidential candidate on the main stage at a debate to say, I'll keep you in suspense. I won't say if I'll accept the results or not. That's a big problem. Moving on to foreign policy and the stuff with Iraq, I think, or in ISIS, Chris Wallace put out, will you put U.S. troops into the vacuum? And Hillary said she won't support soldiers in Iraq as an occupying force. At the same time, though, she has already released and said that, special forces use, just as Obama has done, is completely acceptable and adequate. Well, those are troops there. Those are troops. I don't know what she thinks is magical about special forces, but those are troops on the ground. Those are troops in the air. And so, that was misleading. Of course, he blamed her for the creation of ISIS and for the fall of Mosul. But I don't think any of that really made a dent in anything they had to say about it. And of course, she responded with, he supported the invasion of Iraq. And I've said this over and over and over, and I just don't see it enough said. And if he had any sort of competent campaign management, they would have this out there so easily. It's so easy to answer this question or this accusation of, you supported the war in Iraq and you were for Iraq. It does not matter. I've said this before. It does not matter. He should stop saying it isn't true. It is. He was online with on record with Howard Stern, saying that he wanted the Iraq war, or actually the invasion of Iraq, and it simply doesn't matter because he was not an elected official. He was not a politician at the time, and he was in no way responsible for the actions that the military or an administration would take. She is on record in the Senate voting for the war. Therefore, she can be held accountable. It does not matter what he said in media or anything else at the time as a private citizen and as an entertainer in this country. And I don't get why they will not just capitalize that and on that and make that a thing. Basically, in closing, I think she's talking about reaching out to all Americans, Democrats, Republicans, Independents, this awesome responsibility that it is to be the leader of this country, and that her life's work is for family and children. It's just, it made me actually, I wrote down LOFL, because that's so ridiculous. It's just so ridiculous. That is not her life's work. Her life's work is to gain power and wealth, and to be able to have an influence over this country and a position of power that she will not willingly give up, as we've so seen. She's relentless in this pursuit. But specifically saying, reaching out to all Americans, she wants to represent all Americans. How long ago was it where she called Republicans her enemies? So I'm not buying it. I'm sorry. And Trump didn't do a great job of, he said raising money from people she wants to control, make America great again, veterans, police are disrespected, inner cities are a problem, blah, 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 blah. But one thing he did say that I think is a point that his campaign should make as often as possible is, we can't take 4 more years of Barack Obama, and if you vote for her, that's what you get. But everything else was a bunch of gobbledygook that falls through the cracks, and it was a lot of back and forth. I think Chris Wallace did an excellent job. He hit her, he hit him, held their feet to the fire a few times. He lost control a few times. But I think overall he was a great moderator for this debate. And I think that despite the acts of the candidates on stage, that he tried to maintain this to be as respectable as possible. And that's saying a lot when it comes to these two nominees.
All right, thank you, Jen. But I'd like to add a little something here. The only major difference between special forces and and your average soldier carrying a rifle as an 11 Bravo or infantry soldier is the level of training they receive. And I will say that I think our special forces receive more training than almost. I think Mossad might only be the next close in the world. And this is coming from a Gold Star family member.
Well, no, absolutely. My point is just that she's acting like there wouldn't be forces there, and she's already admitted that she would do what Obama has done and have forces there. And just because they're not going to be infantry soldiers doesn't take away from the fact that you're still putting some of our soldiers in jeopardy and putting them in on the ground there.
Like I said, the only difference between an infantry soldier and a member of the United States Special Forces is the training. Now, I have to say that I'm going to sneak a little opinion in here on the current situation. When I hear that our troops are not in combat and they are going out and acting as forward air controllers. Okay, someone hasn't read the definition of being in the middle of combat, being in combat, and the definition of the words forward air controller. Hello? A forward air controller is out with the men doing the shooting. They've got him to his left, they've got him to his right, and he's calling in airstrikes with eyes on intelligence. Hello? Alright, on that note, Jen, it is your turn to wrap it up.
Well, I basically just did. So all I'm going to say from here is that it was, I don't think there was truly a winner. And I don't think that other than maybe Wallace, who had to tame the crowd, and both the candidates who were always talking over each other. But I think that this debate basically did nothing for either campaign. Most people's minds are made up at this point. And you can find me on Twitter at jhomestead, and you can listen to me with Rick on Tuesday and Thursdays. That's about it.
All right. Sorry, I meant to say Dan. You can.
Well, I wanted to tag both of you right there because all of the troop withdrawals and then special forces going back in, the one thing that's always been a constant there is the Air Force. And the Air Force is there. The Air Force is still running sorties. How are they not troops over there? Honestly.
I will say,
you mentioned, Jen, calling in or Jesse calling in airstrikes. Exactly. Who do you think the airstrikes are coming from?
Right.
It's ridiculous.
I've got to say, there's one thing, Dan. In many cases, the Air Force personnel are not based within the borders of Iraq. In a lot of cases, they're based in neighboring countries. That's how they get away with that.
They are, but
that's
where
how
are they
get
flying
away
their
without
sorties?
Saying they're not boots on the ground in Iraq. They draw a technical, tiny distinction and give them the location where they lay their heads at night, not where they get up and go to work.
Well, I get that. I understand that. But
political spin.
If I'm in that cockpit over Iraq with people shooting at me, I am considered a boot on the ground. That's all I'm saying. I mean, I'm agreeing with you, and I'm agreeing with you further. I mean, it's our people are there. Our people are doing the job, and it's acted like they're not, and it drives me nuts. But I'll just leave it at that on that. But I mean, man, so many things, so many subjects I've got to go through on this. We go on to, I guess, the debate in general. I agree. I think Chris did an awesome job. I think he did the best job of any of the debates, the presidential or vice presidential.
Herding wet cats.
Yeah, but I mean, he did great. I mean, I've always liked him. I think this was the best run debate. I think he did a good job of, like you said, herding the cats. I actually went on Twitter at one point and I saw a tweet that said that basically said shut the F up, which is basically what he did. He said, shut the F up, let's move on. And that's the way a debate needs to be moderated. And that's what he's called a moderator for a reason. He's moderating it. He's supposed to control it. And he controlled it better than anybody I've seen in this election cycle. I thought he did a great job. As far as everything else, I mean, Susan, if you're still on, I've loved having you on these, and I respect you, but it is not a binary decision. It's not a binary vote. I have not been a Republican for 13 years, and I am told constantly on social media that if I don't vote for Trump, I'm voting for Hillary. And I hope that's not what you're saying, because that is not the way it works.
It's not. No, it's not.
And I will not vote for either one of them.
I'm just being tactical, that's all.
What's that?
I'm just being very tactical and very practical because
it's a tactical thing, but I'm not GOP. I'm not a Republican. Why? I mean, it's not tactical to me. My tactical vote for years now has been, why do we have to have this uniparty and we have to vote for one or the other? I've been trying to push, get rid of this for 13 years, and nobody listens to me. I mean, and now we're at this point where we have two turds, and what do we do from here? I've been saying it for 13 years that we need to get away from this. And I'm going to keep getting away from this. I'm not going to stop. I'm not going to vote for either one of them. I'm going to keep pushing to the other side. I don't care if I don't vote for president. I'll vote the down ballot, and I may hold my nose some on the down ballot. But I'm not voting for either one of these two. That's my tactical thing. Neither one of them deserves my vote. Why should I vote for them?
I've got a lot of friends. I've got a lot of friends who feel the very same way, and I agree to a large degree. My only comment is that, well, if you cede your vote, CEDE, if you give it away like that, if you don't vote for president at all, you're allowing others to make that choice, and I can't. All I have is one vote, and I have to do the best that I can with it. But I am not criticizing you in any way. Please believe me. I completely empathize and understand, and I don't like what we're facing, which is we're facing an establishment on both sides, and we do have to find a way to break up the establishment, because as we know, at least from the reports we've gotten, I mean, the former President Bush is voting for Clinton. So it's all one big happy, establishment family here. And as Breitbart said, first we have to vote out the Democrats, and then we have to vote out the rhinos. That's how we have to go. You have to unite and pick them off one at a time and get back to something that is much more responsive to real people. But I completely understand what you're saying, and I don't disagree with you at all. I really don't.
I would say
that's it. And I've been for 13 years now. We go through each election, and I listen to everybody complain. But before the election, I'm saying, you don't need to do this. You don't need to do this.
Yeah.
And they go, bah, humbug. And then they complain about the outcome. Well, when do we get people to realize that you do have a choice? You do have a voice. I'm in a state where when I said I won't vote for president, I might not, because my state won't allow me to write in. So unless they put somebody else on the ballot, I have no choice. I will not vote for Donald Trump. As far as I'm concerned, he is as much a New York liberal as Hillary. I'm not going to vote for either one.
Can I interject real quick? Because, and sorry to speak for you, Rick, but there are places where it can be a vote that matters if it's for a third party, because those states do not allow a third party to be on the ticket for various elections unless they get a certain percentage after some sort of measure is passed. And then that next election, they have to get a certain percentage in order for them to ever be considered again to be on a main ballot. So there are places where it is strategic to vote other than the two main parties. And I know that, Rick can go on about this in the state of Oklahoma, but that's not the only place where that's the case. So I do think it's not throwing a vote away, or it's not voting against or for someone else if you're voting for a third party in some places, because in some places it actually is a very pressing matter and very strategic to do so, and important to do so.
Absolutely. In
order to change the system.
In California,
that's what we're all talking about.
In California, I don't have that luxury. I'm stuck with, it's kind of one-party rule here in California, and it's a jungle primary. So what we end up typically is, other than the president, presidential ballot, what we end up with is two Democrats to vote for. That's it. And so we don't even have even two parties to choose from. It is really essentially one party. That's because in the primary, 3 or 4 people, all of the different groups will run. The top 2 vote getters go on to the general election, and those top 2 vote getters are always Democrats. And so
it's fixed. It's fixed. Democrats. Everything's fixed.
Crazy.
The whole, if you don't get enough votes, it's fixed. It shouldn't be that way. You've got two parties.
You're careful. You're sounding
and
like Trump.
I consider it. That's why I call it a uniparty. They make the rules. They make the rules. It shouldn't be that way.
It shouldn't. You're absolutely right, and that's why people are fed up. And I think that's why a lot of people are kind of going with the populist vote of Trump, because he is an outsider and he says he's going to change it. I hope something happens like that. But I completely agree with your position. A lot of people, I can't vote for him. I know that. But is it okay for me to say that I will accept the election results as gracefully as the Democrats accepted the 2000 election results? I mean, given all of the Project Veritas videos, and there's more to come, and all of the WikiLeaks, I think it's fair to say for anyone to be able to say, no, I'm not going to accept these election results unless I can verify that we haven't had voter fraud, because that's what's going to happen. All the dead people in Chicago are already lined up to vote, and now we know that there's lots of other. They're busing. If you've watched that video, they're going to be busing in illegal immigrants into different countries. That's what Cesar Vargas does for a living, the illegal immigrant attorney, New York lawyer, on those undercover videos. I mean, they're gearing up. They're going to be bringing the buses and voting in all of these swing states. So is that fair? Can I say that I'll accept the election as gracefully as the Democrats in 2000? Remember Al Gore challenging the hanging Chad? The Democrats never accept elections. If they can swing it, if they can go into courts and they can challenge county by county, vote by vote, hanging Chad by hanging Chad, they fight for every vote. So I think it's absolutely fair that we stand up and say, no, I want my ballot counted, and I want to make sure that my state is fair before my electoral votes from our state is counted. I think it's completely fair for Trump to say, no, I'm going to wait and see, because I don't think the vote is fair anymore. I think it is rigged. I think that we have too much voter fraud. We keep asking for voter ID. For goodness sakes, you've got to go to get practically cough drops. You have to show voter ID anywhere, even to pick up movie tickets. If you've ordered them online, they want to see ID. Everything is ID, and yet we can't make people bring a simple government-issued ID that they can get for free down at the DMV. You can't even bring that to vote. That tells you everything. We are at the precipice of a banana republic with the uniparty. I love that word. Deciding who votes and who doesn't, and that's why they're shipping more people in here who will vote for the uniparty vote. And I'm sick and tired of it. And that's our votes are at the risk of not even being counted anymore. And we're furious. Too many people are furious over this. The law doesn't matter, and these people are above our law, and that has got to stop.
I 100% agree with you on that. I'm here in North Carolina. When I go to vote, I have to show my ID, and that's the way it should be.
Yay.
Because if somebody knows, say I'm a registered voter and somebody knows I'm not voting, they could just go in and say, "Yeah, I'm Dan Wright," and go and vote for whoever they want to vote for. And people tell me I'm an idiot, and they tell me I'm a racist, because I agree with North Carolina law. I live in a state that is getting screwed by the federal government right now. My tax dollars go to the federal government, and now because of our voter laws and because of our bathroom laws, we may not get federal funds. The NCAA and everybody else are saying they're not going to hold major games here and everything else, but it's all constitutional. I mean, my state's getting screwed because we have a governor that wants to abide by constitutional law, yet Mr. Trump has gotten my state to the point where it's blue. Now we're probably going to lose our constitutional governor. So, I mean, this is where I stand. I mean, it's all just a big mess, and we've gotten off the debate, and I'm sorry, kind of my fault, but this is a disaster. This is a complete disaster. I'm in a state that is in a complete disaster right now. As far as conservatism goes.
No, you can't be as bad as California. Come on. You can't be.
We're going to get there. We're going to get there. If McCrory loses the state house, North Carolina may be the next California, because McCrory I wasn't happy with him as the mayor of Charlotte because of a few little things, but he's been a fantastic governor. He's been awesome. And my state's blue. I live in the southeast. I border Georgia and South Carolina, and my state is blue.
All right, Susan.
Well, Georgia's about to be blue too.
Susan,
That's
Dan,
true.
I'm going to ask you two to just hold those thoughts for just a few moments. I'll explain once we end this show what I'd like to do with that. And I'd like to go real quick around the horn. Everybody give your social media information. And if anybody knows Donna's, feel free to shout that out. And I think, Rick, I believe you've got Bill's Twitter handle. And
Yep,
we're
Bill
gonna
O'Keefe
start
at
with
Defend
you.
Wall Street. You can follow him along there.
All right, and your social media information, Rick, because there's no way I'm remembering all that stuff you say.
No worries. We're going to go short tonight anyway. Quickest way to keep up with me is on Twitter. You can do that at AOTR_host. All the rest of it, we'll give that out on my main show because we're getting really long in the tooth, and I know folks got to work tomorrow. So, next.
All right, Susan.
You can find me at Real Susan Swift on all social media, at Real Susan Swift. And I have a website, which is susanswift.net. I also write regularly for politichicks.com.
Outstanding, Jen.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I'm at Jay Homestead on Twitter. That's the most direct way to find me. I am on the show with Rick on the Jen and Rick Show on Tuesdays and Thursdays right here on KLRN. And also you can find me over at misfitpolitics.weebly.com. We've got a lot of fun stuff going on and smart people writing. So check it out.
And that brings us back to Dan. Social media information, Dan.
I think we might have lost Dan. I don't hear him anymore.
And I'm not seeing him.
Y'all there?
Yep. There we go, Dan.
I dropped off. I dropped off. I don't know why.
All right. Well, how about the social
Did you follow
media contact information?
Are you up to me yet?
Yep, we are.
Oh, okay. Well, you can find me on Twitter at 1911G_fan. And you can find me on Friday nights with Rick on Robinson and Wright. And you can find Donna at Life. Oh, man, see, make sure I get this right. Life Without PB. Her kids are allergic to peanut butter, so that's her handle. Life Without PB. She's a great follow. She's a lot of fun. She's very witty.
All right, and for the record, I am Jesse. You can find me at Jesse's POV on Twitter. I'd also like to encourage everyone to follow at KLRN Radio on Twitter, because you never know what shows are going to crop up or sneak up. And I have an announcement to make that I'd like to make, a little bit of station news before we sign off tonight. Any of you Star Trek, Star Wars, Stargate fans out there, save 4 o'clock Eastern Time on December 17th, because Judy L. Moore from Conversations in Science will be having a live Star Wars Star Trek show. And it promises to be a lot of fun.
I'll be listening to that.
Oh, we're going to take callers, too.
Awesome.
All right. On that note, I am going to thank all of our outstanding guests. Let's see if I got all the names right on my cheat sheet. Okay. It was John Tebow, Susan Swift, Bill at Defend Wall Street on Twitter, J.R. Homestead, Dan Wright, and Rick Robinson. And I, of course, have been your crazy producer of the night, Jessica Sanders, a.k.a. Jessie. On that note, thank you all for hanging out with us, and you have an outstanding day.